Right, we're live. Joe, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It'd be great to chat to you a bit and find out a bit more about HYROX. Yeah, really enjoyed competing in London, and it's opened up a whole new world to me, really.
Yeah, excited to. We were excited to see you there. For people that don't know about you, and I know many people do, but can you just tell us a little bit about your background, where you come from, and we'll go from there?
So background is in triathlon. Been competing in that for quite a few years now. Well, I think I started competing as a pro back in 2011, 2012, mainly over the Ironman distance, although I do some 70.3s as well. And yeah, I've won quite a few Ironmans. Been top 10 in the World Ironman Championships 3 times. Last time was 2022, where I was fifth. That was my best performance there. And yeah, still training for triathlon, but decided to give a HYROX event a go at the end of the season. To be honest, I'd seen it last year and thought it looked really cool, but didn't really commit. And then this year decided to enter one back in June for after what I was hoping was going to be my last race. Although before it was going to be 3 weeks after my last Ironman, but then just before the week before that Ironman, I thought I ended up having a stroke. Like I had some symptoms, but it turns out there was nothing serious. I went into hospital, had all the tests and everything, but obviously that ended my season early because I didn't really want to push it. And then kind of thought a week out from the race, from the HYROX event, I'll give that a go. It'll be cool to finish the season on, doing an event like that and just trying something new.
Mhm.
And just absolutely loved it, really. Thought it was an awesome event, great atmosphere, and a really good experience.
Awesome. Sorry, were you say you thought that was going to be your last triathlon race ever? Was that, or just for the
No,
season?
no, just it was going to be my last one this year. Like it was the end of the season. Normally the season runs from like March, April time generally to like October, November time. Like some people start it and finish it a bit like later and earlier, but that's generally the triathlon season, which I think is a bit of like the opposite, isn't it, from HYROX? Is HYROX like normally like November to June or something like that?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, as they've expanded and gone more global, it's almost like there isn't a season anymore to a certain extent. But yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. Probably more like October to June is typical. Yeah.
yeah.
How did you get into triathlon in the first place? Like back in 2011?
Well, I actually did it as a kid when I was really young for a bit, like when I was about 13, but then I stopped when I was like 16, 17. And then back in 2011, how I got into it, that was when I got into it more properly. I was actually cycling quite a bit at university and taking that quite seriously. And then I decided at the end of the cycling season, because I was kind of losing a bit of motivation for just training purely for cycling. Like it was quite long hours. There wasn't really that many training partners that I had at the time, and it was I just fancied doing something a bit different. And then thought I'll give a triathlon a go. Fancy doing like a half Ironman as a bit of a challenge. Did it, absolutely loved it, and then just looked up the local triathlon club, got in training with them, and then just took it more seriously, really, like each year, and then just started racing pro, getting a bit better, and then it kind of gradually got more seriously, like from then on.
Right. When you were a kid and you did it as a kid, were you naturally endurance inclined? Did that come naturally to you?
Yeah, I think so. I was always quite good with the endurance side of things when I was younger. I actually think, to be honest, if there was something like HYROX around when I was younger, I would have got into that from the start because I used to love doing like weights and stuff like that when I was younger. I used to do quite a bit of that. Like even when I remember when I was like 13, um, I wanted to get this weightlifting bench from Argos. I remember they used to sell it, and mum and dad were like, "No, you're too young to get that." So I remember me and my mate walking to Argos in Lowestoft, it was about a mile walk, and then because they wouldn't help us get it because they said we were too young, we had to buy it and like carry it back, like the bench and the weights and stuff like that. So I remember that, and getting into doing a bit of that when I was younger, and then actually joined the boxing club mainly just because I like the training. Like, like they used to do a lot of like circuits and stuff like that as part of the training. I just absolutely loved it. And I think if this sport had been around like 15, 20 years ago, it would have been right up my street because I always loved the endurance side of things, but I always loved like the strength part of it as well. But there's not really any other sports that I've seen that combine the two, like especially with more of an endurance focus other than like HYROX. Like that's the only sport I've seen like that.
Yeah, I agree. Like there's things like CrossFit and other functional fitness competitions I've done, but they've always been more on the strength side of things
Yeah,
than the endurance side of things. Like the top guys in CrossFitters are really like top strength guys primarily.
yeah.
So yeah, this like more endurance inclination is great. You mentioned some of your achievements in triathlon and Ironman, like 3 top 10 finishes in the World Championships. Would you say that they're your biggest accomplishments in triathlon? Are they what you're most proud of?
No, probably the wins. What I've had. A big one for me was back in 2016, like quite a breakthrough performance when I was the first British athlete to go under 8 hours for the Ironman distance. That was quite a big thing at the time because back then not many people went under 8 hours. So to be the first person to do it and to be one of only a few at the time was really good. I mean, now it's like 10 a penny. Really, everyone's going under 8 hours. So it's not that big a deal. So that was always a big thing at the time. But probably the wins, I think they're like the ones that you always think are the bigger accomplishments because you've won the race and it's quite hard to win them now. Like there's so many strong people that like even to win one is you have to be on like your A game really. So I always think of them ones more. But the top tens in the world champs are quite nice. Like they're good, but I wouldn't say they're like my best ones.
Okay. And just to give people an idea of what like sub 8 means or whatever it means, like your run times, bike times, and swim times in an Ironman, like your run time, for example, marathon distance. What would you do that in during a typical Ironman?
Well, if you have a good day, like it would be under 2 hours 40. Like my best one's like 2:37. That would be decent, but definitely low 2:40s would be what you'd be looking to do, and ideally like 2:30s something like mid 2:30s to 2:40. And then the bike, obviously, you want to be around like depends on how hilly the course is, but say it's like a decent course, fairly fast, you want to be around 4 hours to like 4:10 at worst. And the swim, you'd want to be probably around 50 minutes. That's like 3.8k the swim for people that don't know, and 180k's on the bike.
Yeah. Okay. Was you those wins, like your Ironman wins? If I asked what your best sporting experiences are of your life, would it be those wins, or does someone else spring to mind?
Yeah, probably them. And actually, thinking about when you said what was my best one, I would actually say probably when I did Wales last year, because I had a pretty good swim and the race was all going to plan. And then I had a mechanical on the bike and I lost 20 to 25 minutes. I can't remember exactly what it was by the side of the road. And I thought the race was over, but we managed to get it sorted with like the referees, like the assistants and stuff, the mechanical sport. I was off on my way again and I managed to battle through and I ended up winning the race and like had a really good run, like felt absolutely incredible on it. But to come back from that far behind after having something like that happen and then ended up actually winning by about 7 or 8 minutes, I think, in the end, that was definitely an amazing day. And probably that was actually probably my best sporting experience because the atmosphere in Wales is incredible. Like the course is lined on the run, and obviously being a British athlete, you get incredible support in that race as well, especially when you're racing like foreign athletes that come over from the continent. Like everyone wants to see a British person win, even though the Welsh don't really like the English. Like they still get they still get behind you there.
For one day, they're willing to like
Yeah,
you.
for one day.
How about the? I know you've done the Sub7 project.
Oh,
Can you
that
tell
was
us more
incredible.
about that?
Yeah, that was actually an incredible sporting experience. Actually, I'd actually say, yeah, that was definitely a massive highlight. So that was basically they wanted to run a project to see whether or not you could complete an Ironman distance in under 7 hours. I think it came about because like I'm sponsored by Bahrain Endurance, and I think after one of the races, because they have a half Ironman in Bahrain, and Mo Farah was out there, Mark Cavendish was out there, and obviously a lot of the top triathletes that were sponsored by Bahrain at the time were there. So like Jan Frodeno, who's like multiple world champion, Alistair Brownlee, like double Olympic champion. And they're all talking, I think, over dinner about what would be possible to do for an Ironman if you had the fastest swimmer, the fastest biker and the fastest like runner, like how fast could you go? And then I think the conversation veered towards, is it possible to do a sub 7 Ironman if you had a team time trial like you get in the Tour de France, if you had some runners like helping pace you, you know, like they did for like Kipchoge, you know, for like breaking two and stuff like that, and like getting you water bottles and like, you know, basically you make like the fastest course. And then that was what kind of got the Sub7 project underway. And it was supposed to be Alistair Brownlee that was meant to be doing it. And I was actually originally going to be a pacer for him, but then injury ruled Alistair out. And then 8 days before the race, I got the call up to say, do you want to do it? Which is kind of like, I wasn't really thinking that I was going to be in shape for it, because I was actually coming back from COVID. I had COVID in May, and this was, I think, end of April I had COVID, and this was when it was a bit worse. You know, I mean, now it's not really, it doesn't really seem that bad, does it? But so I wasn't in top form, and then there was that race. Like, they gave me 8 days notice, but I thought it'd be such a great opportunity, and I thought if I don't take the opportunity, I'll regret that. You know, probably for the rest of your life, because you'd be watching that on TV thinking, oh, why didn't I give it a go? So I was like, yeah, I'll give it a go. Wasn't sure if I'd go under 7 hours, but yeah, had a bad swim for me, but that was expected because I hadn't really been doing a massive amount of swimming in the build up. But the biking went absolutely phenomenal. Like, we had an awesome team. Like, we had people that had rode the Tour de France before on the team, like Alex Dowsett, former world record holder for the hour, Dan Bigham, who's working with Team Ineos. Some of you guys, the listeners, might know them as like one of the top cycling teams in the world. So we had some really good riders on the team, great expertise, and we managed to do an amazing run. I mean, amazing bike. I started it ahead of the other guy who I was racing, which was that started the run ahead of him. It was Kristian Blummenfelt, who was like the Olympic champion and the reigning Ironman World Champion at the time. I think I had about a 3 minute buffer, which for me was incredible, you know, to considering the notice I'd got and the training I'd had leading into it. But unfortunately, he caught me on the run, beat me by 3 minutes, but we both went under 7 hours. I think I did 6 hours 47 in the end, but it was amazing. Like, and to be honest, like the performance that I did on the day for how I, like, from what I should have done with my fitness, probably exceeded it. Like, normally you end up going into an event, don't you? And you think, oh, I've trained so well and I just didn't perform. You know, I know I could have done better. Whereas that was actually like, my training's been shocking. Like, I don't know how I pulled that out the bag, but I'll take it. You know,
Amazing, awesome, and just to like drive home what you did on the bike, that was, you essentially set a time that most people didn't even think would ever be possible, right? And like, what was your like average pace? Do you know what your average pace was over that
yeah,
distance?
yeah. We averaged 55.5 kilometers an hour for 180 kilometers. So basically, I think it was like 34 miles per hour, which, like, if you try and ride that like on a bike for yourself for a bit, seems like pretty hard. And luckily, we had some really good expertise on the team, so they worked out a great strategy. But it was like fairly hard, like even sitting on the back because of the little surges, and you had to just concentrate so hard on keeping the gap as small as possible because of the draft, the energy you save from drafting. That I remember at one bit we got with about 2 laps to go because it was round. We rode 16 or 20 kilometers to a circuit, and then it was round a circuit that was like a big oval, which they use for like testing of cars, I think. And the circuit must have been about 6 kilometers a lap, something like that, 6, 7 kilometers. And I think we got to like 1 lap to go, and one of the guys, like Harry Tanfield, I think one of them said, all right, we only got 1 lap to go now. Let's up it. Let's up it. And I was like, no, like knock it back a bit. Like, I don't want to go any harder because I've got to run a marathon afterwards. But like, it was quite, for him, because he was only doing the cycling bit, he was obviously thinking like, let's up it. We've got 7Ks to go. Let's rip it up. And I'm thinking, geez, I don't even know if I'm going to get around the marathon.
um, just a question that sprang to mind because you mentioned it. Do you ever work on like at concentration for over 3 hours is hard, obviously, and I've heard people talk about like a major factor in endurance is like the concentration and keeping your mind in the right place for that length of time. Is that something that you work on, or is it something that's like naturally a byproduct of the training?
Yeah, I never really work on it. I think it's just a byproduct of the training. Like, once you get through the training and you're tapered and everything, I think if your head's normally in the right place and you're looking forward to it, that, you know, when you're in, when you go, when you start a competition, it's like you're so in the zone that you don't even think about it, do you? You know, and like 3 hours in the grand scheme of things isn't that hard to keep concentrated for, especially if you're tapered. I mean, like, if you're tired and some days you have them days where your head's not in it, it's just not going to happen, is it? But when you're fresh and you're feeling good, it all comes easy, doesn't it, on them days?
Yeah. Is that one of the reasons I asked it is because even in HYROX, people can like often make mistakes, like run an incorrect number of laps, like forget the order of the stations, everything like that. The mind often goes for people in a HYROX. So that's yeah, I was just
I
wondering if
think
it's the
it's
same.
hard though in a HYROX to think about that, because there was bits when I was doing it on one of them, and I thought that I can't remember what part it was, but I was like, I thought I was on my second lap, but I weren't. I was on my first lap, because
Mm.
it's like, even though it's only 2 laps, you've got to do it at a time. It does get confusing at some bits, because you end up thinking, and like the only reason that I remember the stations is because you remember the last one that you did, don't you? Like, it makes
Yeah,
it so much easier, but it is very confusing in a HYROX sometimes like that. It'd almost be a bit easier if it was just one lap for the run, wouldn't it? Uh,
yeah. And you like, to be honest, like you're a sport to a certain extent in London, because some events are 3 laps, some are 4 that they've had in
Yeah, I
America.
think
So
4 laps would be so hard to know. You'd
yeah,
almost like have to lap it on your Garmin or something each lap,
yeah,
wouldn't you, or something?
yeah. Can we talk a bit about your triathlon training, like in terms of like the hours that you're putting in every week? What does that look like?
Well, normally when you're in full training, like, and you'd like say in like January, February time, something like that, you'd be looking probably 25 hours, 30 hours would be a very big week. But I'd say normally like 25 to 27 hours would be like pretty standard. Probably 5, maybe 6 swims a week, ranging from like, you might do like one recovery one, which might be like 2K ish, something like that. And then like the bulk of them between like 4K to 5 kilometers. And they would obviously range from like steady endurance ones to like speed ones, where you might be doing like sprints or like threshold stuff. So like repeated like 200s, 300s, stuff like that.
Mhm.
The cycling, probably around 12 to 15 hours a week. And that would range from like steady endurance. And normally you do like 2 harder sessions a week, probably, where like one might be like a more like VO2 kind of one, or threshold session. And the other one might be a tempo kind of session. And your long rides would generally be, I would say, from like, well, for me, normally around 4 hours to 5 hours tops. Like, not that often I'd go over 5 hours, but like sometime, like if you're in a training camp, you would, or like if the weather's a bit better. But in the winter, like 5 hours would be like the longest you'd ride. And then the running, fairly similar as well, like probably 2 harder run sessions a week. I'd do like one, normally like tempo one, and one like speed session. A long run for me would be about 90 minutes, something like that. And then a few easiest runs where you kind of just run on the trails, or like, undulating routes, but you don't worry about the pace. It's just like, kind of 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay, okay. What do your like the more intense sessions look like from a running perspective?
Maybe like 8 by K, something
Okay,
like that, up to 12 by K, 10 800s. So probably fairly similar to what you do if you were
yeah.
doing like a HYROX kind of thing, maybe like 16 400s, or like something like 8 by K, and you might do 1K, like, or for the tempo session that might be, and you might do 8 by K, but like with a K in between, so it's like actually 16. But 1K is at like threshold. 1K would be like a reasonable pace, so it's not easy, but you're not really recovering. So it's like 16K's worth. But normally the speed sessions are like 800 Ks. At most, you might go to a mile. You might do like 5 or 6 bar mile, something like that, with like 2 or 3 minutes recovery.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Interesting. You've had a kid this year, right? Back in March, was it?
April, yeah, 3rd of April, yeah.
How's fatherhood been?
It's been good, but it's definitely been tough. Like, it's been harder than what I expected. Really, like, it's just so demanding, isn't it? But
Yeah.
like, it's great. But she does seem like she grows up like pretty quick. Like, I mean, we've been abroad with her now 3 times. Like, we only just got back from Gran Canaria, and she came with us, and I think, yeah, it is really nice, like having like someone come with you, and I guess like bring up another human. But yeah, it's definitely been a lot harder than what I was expecting.
Yeah. Has that like affected your training at all? Like being able to do 25-hour weeks, has it affected that?
Not really. I've been like pretty lucky that like my wife's like done like the bulk of the work and stuff like that. So like that's made it like really like easy, like for me, to be honest. Like, I've had it like quite easy compared to what it would be for some people. So
Hmm.
she's like really helped me with that, and that's definitely made a big difference, because I wouldn't have been able to get the training in, because I don't think you'd recover as well. So without her like kind of doing more of the work, I wouldn't have been able to do it at all. So it's made a massive difference.
On the training side of things, do you use technology much? Do you find like tech is an important factor in your training?
What kind of tech would you like?
I don't know really. Like even just like are you using heart rate straps? Like are you like closely monitoring your heart rate on
Oh
these
yeah,
runs, that type of thing?
yeah. I'd use like heart rate for most training. Like not really too bothered about like a steady run, but like sometimes I'll still use it for them. Um, Definitely use that. Like I use the Garmin overnight as well to like see like heart rate variability and stuff. I find that quite interesting. Like
Okay.
it gives you like a sleep score and stuff, and I find that that really does seem to correlate quite well to how I feel. Like I know if I get like a shit sleep score and heart rate variability is down, I'm going to feel like crap, you know. And then for biking, use like heart rate, power meters, and stuff like that, so you can really gauge your training. Um, Swimming, you don't really have much tech for that. You just have to use like, you know, you just time your laps in the pool and stuff. Um,
Are
but
you
yeah, definitely.
using, sorry, are you using the HRV to influence your training? Like, are you like, oh, this is a shit score today, I better take it easy or anything like that? Or,
Um, Kind of like if I wake up and it's terrible. The thing is, if I wake up and it's terrible, like you do feel a bit groggy, you might do one set. Like you still obviously, if you were training, you'd go and do a session, but then you might think, like, especially when you're warming up, say you feel a bit sluggish, you'd think, well, I might think, I'll just use this one as an easier session today, and then I might adjust the rest of the day. Like if I was going to have some other harder sessions, and I think there's no point, like, because what I generally find is if heart rate variability drops quite low from below the baseline, you might end up, you're probably going to come down with something because there's normally a reason, like an illness is coming.
Mhm.
And it wouldn't be surprising to see if the following day is, if it's still low, it's probably because you're then going to break out into an illness or something like that. So I would adjust my training if like the heart rate variability was really low and I was warming up and I felt like crap. If I warmed up and I felt good and I was meant to have a hard session, then I'd probably go with it. But it would give me the confidence that if I was warming up and I felt bad, all right, there's a reason for this. Your body's like not 100%. Just do an easy session or use it as a recovery one. Have a nice sauna and stuff like that at the pool, chill out, and just use it more of a social where you meet your mates, do an easy session, and then, you know, adjust it for the rest of the day. Maybe take it off, see, like, try and recover more, because the recovery is what's going to make the biggest difference, because you don't want this to linger on and to feel terrible for like a few days, because it's better to have one easy day and recover and then be able to get back to it the next day than push yourself and have 3 days of rubbish training, you know,
Yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah. I've heard you talk before about with the World Championships, the Ironman World Championship previously, at least, have been in Hawaii in previous years, and like the heat of Kona don't necessarily suit you. Like you don't necessarily thrive in that. Do you do? Is that right? And do you work on heat training and coping with the heat? And one reason I'm asking again is because HYROX can get very hot. People like cope with that in different ways. Is that something that you work on?
Yeah, you definitely have to work on it before like the hot race, especially like Kona. So like trying to keep your core body temperature higher for like longer periods of time, and doing some work in the sauna as well. But I mean, Kona's never really gonna suit me compared to some of the smaller guys because I'm like nearly 80 kilos, and obviously to go at a certain power or speed, to go at the same speed as the lighter guys, I have to produce more power because obviously there's more mass. So then you end up creating more heat in the body. So, and you can't, it's hot when it's so humid, you can't, the sweat, what you evaporate doesn't really cool you down as much. So just genetically, like me being nearly 80 kilos, racing against people that are like 65 kilos means that it's going to be way harder for me anyway. But I do the heat prep and stuff like before Kona to try and like get better at it. I mean, you have to really if you go in there, and obviously try and spend a decent amount of time in the heat, you know, training there beforehand. Doing some altitude training, I think, definitely helps because gives you like higher blood volume as well. So then you've got more blood to like cool you down. So yeah, mixture of like altitude, training in the heat, keeping your core body temperature high for extended periods of time, and sauna prep, like do all that. But like, I don't know, maybe there's more. If there is, let me know.
Well, what might the heat training look like? Like briefly, is it just a case of like wearing more clothing while you're training for the few weeks before and doing some time in the sauna? What does it look like?
Well, if you were training, say if you were training in England and you were like doing it with the heat in the heat, you might. if you could get like you could take like a core pill or something like that, or get like a body sensor. But ideally, like the protocol you'd want to do would be get your core body temperature up by 1 to 1.5 degrees, and hold it there for like 60 to 90 minutes. So like whatever you need to do that would be so you could either heat the room up, with like a heater, you could put more clothes on, but you need to just get your core body temperature up by like 1 to 1.5 degrees. And then you need to hold it there for like 90 minutes. And then you'd obviously do that like 2, 3 times a week. That would be like the optimum way that you'd want to do. Um, like the sauna prep's all right, but that is definitely better than the sauna prep, because the sauna prep's really hot that you might only be able to stay up in there for like 20 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And the problem with that is it doesn't give you a core body temp. You actually a massive amount of stimulus, because it's like it goes too hot too quick. Whereas keeping your core body temperature up for 1.5 degrees for a longer period of time forces you to adapt over a longer duration. And then the idea of that is to just produce more blood. And then when you're racing, you've got more blood to cool you down. And obviously having more blood as well will give you the same effect as the altitude training. So it should give you running and everything a boost going into the event. So I know some athletes, like for triathlon, will do heat prep even when they're not going to a hot race, because it will increase blood volume.
Right. Okay. How long do you do it for? Is it like for the 3 weeks before the race, or what?
For about 4 weeks, something like that.
Right. Okay. All right. Cool. Um, I know. Sorry, I'm going to ask about the most recent Ironman World Champs, which didn't go how you wanted them to.
Yeah.
Was it? Do you feel like there was a reason for that? Because there was no. I think I read like there was no obvious reason at the time why it didn't go how you wanted. Like, have you assessed afterwards and found anything?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was just the equipment with my, what I had on my bike at the time. Like it wasn't working properly. And we had so many issues with like getting it sorted beforehand, like changing cranks and stuff like that, basically due to the hilliness of the course. And I was out in altitude trying to train. And I got my mum to bring some stuff out when she came to Nice, because obviously I was already in the south of France training. The reason I was out there is because it was only a 4 hour drive and we were getting the altitude training. So a load of the equipment I had at home, or it was at my like mum and dad's house. My dad was actually out with me like while we were doing the altitude training, so we had to get her to bring some stuff out. And then I think there was something wrong with the crank, because it just wasn't, the bike just wasn't working properly. Like on the race day, it just didn't seem like, I was actually feeling good. The numbers were all good, but there was just no speed there. And yeah, I've tried it like since then, and the bike, yeah, definitely didn't seem like it was working like it should do, which I don't know if it's, I think the bearings might be seized or something in it. But I've gone to I've kind of built up another bike which I was planning to use before Florida, but unfortunately didn't end up getting to race that one. But yeah, it was very frustrating because I put so much into that race, and I actually seemed like I was in really good form, and I felt good all race week as well. So I was expecting quite a good result. So it was very frustrating to kind of have your equipment like let you down. But going forwards, I've been speaking to one of my sponsors with the bike, and they're gonna like take a mechanic out for the big races, because some of the other companies that sponsor some of the athletes, they have their mechanic that goes out with the pro athletes, and you literally can take your bike in, that it's going to come out and it's going to be sorted. Whereas I've got my dad who's kind of doing it for me, which is like it's all right, but he's just a normal guy, just got a, his hobbies like bikes and wants to see you do well, but it's different than a professional mechanic, isn't it? So going forwards, I think they're gonna do that. Take a mechanic out, and you can give it, and that would be a massive peace of mind, because I'm terrible with the bike mechanics. And the last thing you want is something like your equipment to let you down on race day, especially when you put so much time and effort into it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about HYROX. So you enjoyed it, yeah?
Oh yeah, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Like really, really fun. Great event.
Um, you like obviously your running was very good. It's like it looks like the station work that needs some work going forwards. Is that something that you're going to do? Is that like something you want to continue to do?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
also, what was the worst station? What was the worst part of the race for you?
Well, I actually thought the worst part for me was the pull, the sled pull. But actually, after looking at the results, like the farmer's carry was even worse. But yeah, the sled pull was just horrendous, which I'm so surprised by, because when I mean, I only did one training session in the lead up to it, but like even when I was in the warm up area before, like the sled pull went well. Like I tried the weight, like, so when I was at David Lloyd and I did like a session beforehand, we racked 200 kilos on the sled push, couldn't even move it with 200 kilos. And we're thinking, hopefully this is just a really grippy surface, otherwise we're fucked. Like I'm going to be there, like I literally wouldn't have completed it. Like it was impossible. I thought, surely it can't be that hard. With the amount of people that do HYROX, I thought like there's just going to be so many people that wouldn't get it done. But you never know. I thought, well, I haven't done any training properly for it, so maybe I'm just shit at it. But then the sled pull, even at David Lloyd, I could do it with 150 kilos. Like it wasn't a problem. So I was quite confident about that, and I was worried about the sled push. But the sled push on the day was actually my best thing, and I was really surprised. And the sled pull, as soon as I got onto it, I just felt like I couldn't move it. Like it was like my arms were so fatigued. I don't know if it was from the ski erg, but just had nothing. And then the same muscles that you used for that felt like they were the same ones for the farmer's carry. And I just struggled to hold the kettlebells, which in training when I was fresh was absolutely fine. And I thought it would be fine on race day, but it's just such a different kettle of fish, isn't it? When you do the events in training in isolation compared to doing them in a HYROX, it's like you just can't compare. It's like running a marathon fresh to running a marathon off the bike. You know, it's like, it's just totally different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah. In fact, I know we've spoken before, but in fairness to you, like sometimes those sled pulls can be rougher than other days. Like there can be inconsistencies in them, and there's certainly been people that haven't been able to move them before. So it might have just been you got a bad one and it ruined your arms for the rest of the race. Like, I guess you never truly know.
To be fair, I hadn't done any training on the ski erg, and I probably went out too hard on the ski erg just because like your fitness was good. And I see that all the time with people that do running from when they come from cycling. It's like you've got good cardiovascular fitness, so you can push it quite hard, but all the other muscles and stuff aren't used to running, and they just go out so hard. They can go quite hard for what their bodies are used to, and they end up getting injuries and stuff. And I reckon that was probably like me on the ski erg. Like your cardiovascular fitness gets you through it because you're quite fit, but the specific muscles for the ski erg are terrible, and they just will fatigue so much quicker that I probably fatigued the muscles on that. That as soon as I got onto the sled pull, I had nothing, but and I was there for ages. Like I actually got there. I think I was first on my wave, and I was thinking, this is great. Like I'm on it for a good one. 14 minutes, lost like 11 minutes to someone like on the pull alone.
Yeah.
And then the farmers, I actually thought I was going to have to DNF on the bloody farmers carry because I just couldn't. I've struggled to pick the thing up. I thought, I don't know how I'm going to get, like, I literally can't hold the damn kettlebell thing, but I just smothered my hand in chalk. It managed to obviously grip the kettlebell enough and got through it. But yeah, I would love to do some more training for it and do some more HYROX events. Like I'd love to give it a proper crack next year and see what I could actually do in some, because I think if I train for it, I could probably do all right. But that's the big thing, isn't it? You know, you need to train for it. You can't underestimate a HYROX if you want to do half decent. And to be fair, for my first one in this one, I should have probably entered the open one. But you know what it's like when you see like the pro or the open one, you kind of get carried away sometimes. But if I'd done the open one, I probably would have done all right because I wouldn't have fatigued so much, and I would have probably done a lot better performance. But I mean, it's good to test yourself in the elite one, I guess, and see how you stack up on them weights. And I mean, I know exactly what I'd need to do in training, I think, to improve a lot more. And definitely a big part of that would be strengthening the grip muscles, you know, because that was what really fatigued and let me down. And definitely practice some wall balls. Like before the event, I hadn't even done one wall ball in training properly. So that was like my first thing. I actually completely underestimated it. I didn't think it would be that bad. And then like the catching of the wall ball was what really was getting me. Every time I caught it, it felt like I was getting a punch in the chest because my technique was so bad. Like I think you're supposed to catch it pretty high, aren't you? And use the momentum to like kind of spring you down and up from the squat, whereas I was catching it quite low and it felt like I was getting a punch in the guts and stuff. And I was having to like, it was easier for me to just let the ball hit the floor and pick it back up again. And then
one at a time.
One at a time. And then that fatigues you a lot more. So it was a nightmare. I was on the wall balls for so long. I actually started to recover because I was like, like my heart rate had gone down because I was there for that long.
It is a very like technique specific thing though. If you haven't practiced it, like it can come relatively quickly, I think, when you do some technique work. And similar with sled pull, to be fair, especially at the heavier weights. You try and like use arms only and all that sort of stuff. You get found out, I think, at the low weights, especially. Yeah. You mentioned like open might have been easier as well, but especially for someone like you with your endurance background, like partnering with someone who's got a similar endurance background on the doubles event, I suspect you could go very quick, because it's not far off being just a pure running event when you're doing it as a double.
Yeah.
You knew some other triathletes at the event as well, didn't you?
Yeah. Like Gordon Benson was there. I think he was probably the best of the triathletes. He actually went to the Olympics in 2016, and I think he did like 63, 64 minutes, something around there, which is pretty decent. And another one that used to race professional, like Scott Bayvell, he did the doubles. I think he did like 53 minutes, something like that. And it was ended up only being like 20 seconds off Hunter McIntyre. So I think he's like really pleased, because I'm pretty sure that was his first HYROX event as well. But he's obviously done a bit more training for it than me. But he's really keen to give like an individual one a go, I think, and see what he can do.
Right.
And then some of the guys that I know from here, like locally, like competed in it, but like they're not like professional athletes or anything. But I know there's a lot of triathletes though, because I did have a lot of DMs from people that were triathletes that competed and stuff. And it seems like a lot of triathletes are actually doing HYROX. I think they really think it looks quite good, especially for the off season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know like Peleo Menendez, who's in the Elite 15 at the moment, he competed in Chicago and Stockholm. He's come from an Ironman background, and as like when he first came in, I think he really struggled on the sled pull and some of those other stations, but like he's made dramatic improvements, and now he's one of the top in the sport. So it's shown that it can be done when you've got that endurance base, certainly. I know you've talked about like sponsorship. I know you've like talked about sponsorship in Ironman and everything like that. What would you need to see, do you think, if you like just fell in love with HYROX? What would you need, like someone at your level, what would you need to see from HYROX to like be encouraged to make the leap to giving it a go? Would it be just seeing like the growth and the sponsorship opportunities? Is that?
Yeah, like definitely, and maybe more of the elite competitions. Like I think, but I surely can see that happening, because the sport's got so big now, and I think even in the last year, it seems like there's a lot of decent athletes that are trying to do HYROX, like and trying to get spaces in the Elite 15. And am I right in thinking there's only like 4 or 5 like elite races like that a year,
there's like 4 elite majors, and they're trying to qualify for the elite at the World Championships. There's like 4, 5 really in total.
I think like basically at every HYROX event, really, you want to be having like an elite 15 kind of competition, don't you? And they have the elite one on at some point. I think a really good point for the elite one to be would be the break between the open and before the proper elite. So like when I did the pro one or whatever, and like the amateurs or whatever go, there was that like 30-minute break, wasn't there, or like 20-minute break where there's no one. I think if you actually could if they had an hour break and you put the pros on, then that would be the perfect time for it, because I think the atmosphere would be really, really good for it. But I think if they had more elite races, that would be definitely a big thing, because like 4 races it isn't really enough, is it? Like you need a race like every single event, because not every athlete who's in the Elite 15 will do them. But then it allows more professionals, if they got professional to be able to compete, and maybe some bigger tournaments as well. So like some where there's bigger prize money, where you attract like bigger fields. So like you maybe keep these regional ones that you said, and maybe they've got like triple the prize money, and then at the others there's ones that have got the same prize money as this one. So like some of the top names might think, well, I'm just going to, like, for instance, like that Hunter McIntyre might think, well, I'm only going to do the regional ones because they're the big money ones, and then I'll do the world champs. And then some of the other people that are on the way up will think, I'll do the normal ones because I've got more of a chance to try and get a bit better. And if they did qualify for a regional one, they might give one a go, but they're probably not going to do every regional one, because they're just, on their way up. And then with the sponsors, I mean, like, I don't really know how much sponsorship there is in the HYROX, but like I can see it's got to get bigger because there's so many people competing into it and getting into it. And if they, I think with the TV coverage, because I've watched quite a few of them now, like I think it's all right, but they could definitely film it a lot better. Like if they had more, if the cameras followed a bit of the race a bit more, because it seems like they stick with the front person all the time. But also it would be good if they had cameras at the stations where they showed you sometimes like a lot more like the speed that they're going on some of the exercises, like for instance the ski erg and the rowing, and if they got right up close so you could like see the people, you know, like see the like the effort on the people's faces and stuff like that, and showed a lot more of that side, that would be like really good. But I think the TV coverage is definitely going to get better and better because it's pretty new, isn't it? Like, have they just been televising them for like a year at the moment, something like that, a year and a bit?
Yeah, pretty much. It pretty much started in May at the World Championships in May, and
Yeah,
then they've done a couple since then. I don't know if you saw the one at the weekend that we did in
yeah, I
Stockholm.
watched it. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that was a dramatic improvement from what there was in Chicago. So it's on the
yeah,
right
that was better.
trajectory. Yeah.
I feel like the sport's grown too quick for everything, like quicker than everything else has at the moment, you know, because I don't think they would probably have expected the sport to get from 700 2 years ago to 12,000, because that's just crazy. And like, to be fair, if London had of, they could have probably sold 16 or 17,000 people if they had been able to, if they could have had that many people compete, you know, if it allowed them to, they would have easily sold that many. Because I remember when I entered, which was in June, a lot of the events, I think the Open had already sold out by then. And a lot of my friends that wanted to do it couldn't even get an entry in by the time it got to like end of June, July time. So I think they could have easily sold like at least 50% more had they have had the space. So it shows that the sport's got huge demand. And I think it's almost grown too quick. I think the sponsors are definitely going to come to it. And maybe like people like, I don't know. It's a very tough one because you don't want the thing that could ruin it would be is if athletes take bad deals, like real low money deals, because then it just devalues everyone, doesn't it? And that's a big thing that's been happening in triathlon. Whereas, like, say a sponsor offers you like 10 grand or something, and then someone says I'll do it for 8, and then someone else does it for like 7 or 6 because they want to get it. You end up like knocking it down. Whereas you ideally want to know what people are charging, and you kind of set a decent price, and then they have to pay it because the athletes aren't maybe used to it because the sport's grown so quick. They might end up taking like freebies and stuff like that and not asking for much money. And then all of a sudden everyone's getting a rubbish deal just because that's the kind of price they've set for each other. But I think the TV coverage will help. And I think more pro events will definitely help, because if they start getting decent coverage on like, say, like, because they're broadcasting it on YouTube, they start getting decent views and they're doing events like, you know, nearly every week with a HYROX event, then that's only going to make the sport get a lot bigger. And yeah, I can see it definitely improving as time goes on.
Okay. Just a couple of questions, if that's all right. One, just while we're talking about HYROX, I'm interested to know like your thoughts on if you were training for solely HYROX, how would your running training change from what you're doing now? If it would, like, and it sounds like you're doing like 8x Ks and things like that, so maybe it wouldn't. Would you think it would change?
No, probably not massively. No, I think it would probably keep fairly similar. But then instead of doing the biking and swimming, you just put that effort into doing a lot more strength stuff. So, like, I mean, I'd probably look to do like 5 or 6 strength sessions a week and like HYROX specific sessions. But that's just me off the top, like thinking about it like that. I mean, I'd probably have to talk to someone with background in like HYROX or see what the others do, because I'm not even sure exactly what other people do that are training for HYROX. I've seen people post sessions up when it seems like they do like almost like race simulations and stuff like that, you know, where they do like a run and an exercise and then a run or something like that. So I guess I'd have to do some stuff like that, and definitely some practice on the techniques for some of the exercises. And I would definitely need to get some advice, but I'd probably do the same run training, but then look to do like 5 or 6 strength kind of based sessions, or, you know, specific HYROX sessions a week. Does that sound like what most people, what do most people do?
Yeah. I mean, it obviously depends on your background and where in the season you are as well. Like, sometimes like that simulation type stuff can be overdone to a certain extent, I think. But certainly before a race, like getting used to that feeling and getting used to like shuttling the blood around the body and moving from running to sled push and that type of thing is certainly an important factor, not necessarily something that you do year round. And then, purely on the running training, like your triathlon training sounded more similar than maybe I'd expected, to be fair, to what someone might do for HYROX. You know, the blend of the slow, steady stuff and then the intervals and the speed work is fairly typical. But yeah, you want like that compromised running as well in there to get used to running after pushing a sled and after doing 100 meters of lunges. So yeah.
I think for a HYROX, you basically want to train like you are for a 10K running race. Mm-hmm. Like, I think if you're in good 10K to half marathon run shape, then you'll do a really good HYROX run. And I think that's what you need to do. So if you look at like what you'd want to do for a 10K, half marathon at tops, depending on what level you are, you know, if you're like someone who's doing like a low 30-minute, like 10K, then, you know, 10K to half marathon would be all right because around an hour. But if you're doing like a half marathon in about an hour 40, you probably want to look more for like training for a 10K and get that done. But I think if you train for a 10K run, like how you would to get your best 10K, I think that would be perfect for the running, because 8 by K is like a really standard, like you can do a really good 8 by K if you're in really good 10K shape. So I think like that's ideally what you'd want. And ideally you want to be running, I think you want your threshold run pace to be as low as possible. That's the key for what you can hold for about an hour, because then you can run at that pace or slightly slower than that. You can then get rid of the lactate while you're running. So then you go into the stations and feel fresher. Because that's the key, isn't it? You want to run pretty well, but it's like there's no point running 10 seconds faster on the run and then get into a station absolutely fucked, because you can lose 10 seconds almost straight away. Like if I went into like the sledge push, like gassing it on the run, I'm probably going to have to stop for like 5-6 seconds as soon as I get to the sled to recover. And then you're going to push it so much slower that the whole advantage you got on the run was gone, isn't it? It's like the run is more about, like in HYROX, I think, running as fast as you can while recovering for the next station, because the stations are almost like the bits that make you surge, aren't they? It's like there's no easy way to do them stations really, apart from maybe the ski erg and the row. Because they're similar to running, where if you wanted to, you could back off the pace. But I feel like all the other ones are just like force you to go into the red. Like, and if you don't go into the red, you just lose so much time that you're out the race anyway. Yeah. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah. And you're right about those little breaks. Like, even you can have a little break midway on the sled push, and that can eat up 10 seconds, and suddenly that 10 seconds that you went quicker on the run just now is eaten up. So yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, this has been fantastic. Excited to see what you can do if you come back to HYROX, or when you come back to HYROX. For people that want to find out more about you, follow you, where should they go?
Can go on my Instagram, Not Another Average Joe. YouTube, Joe Skipper. They're probably like the main two. And then we've also got like a podcast, which is a triathlon one, but it's a bit of a Mickey Mouse like piss take one. And that's Triathlon Mockery. They can like obviously follow me on that.
Okay. All right. Also, man, I'll say for people listening that you've got a couple of good videos of you doing the HYROX up on your YouTube channel that are definitely worth a watch. So yeah, check those out. All right, brilliant. Thanks for this, mate. Appreciate it, and hopefully talk to you again soon.